They laughed when Earth walked out of the Galactic Council. They called us primitive, violent, unsophisticated apes. But when their NAV systems collapsed, when their AI turned suicidal, when their fleets froze in deep space with no explanation, the laughter stopped. Humanity didn't go to war. We just left. And the Galacxy discovered what happens when the apex predator takes its toys and goes home. The council chambers shimmered with sterile brilliance, a towering dome of crystalline light and arrogance. Over 200 species gathered in tiers, cloaked in regalia and superiority. The chamber's heart was hollow until a single Terran figure stepped into it. Admiral Iris Monroe. She didn't bow. Didn't pause. Just walked to the center dais, black coat swaying behind her, and looked up. Her voice didn't echo, it punched. Earth resigns from the Galactic Council. A murmur rippled. Confusion. Scoffs. Then laughter. High Chancellor Virex of the Dithari stood, golden feathers puffed in outrage. You presume to sever treaties ratified over centuries? Monroe's eyes were flat. We don't presume. We're done. Counselor Zor hissed through gilled cheeks. You can't simply leave. Earth is bound by integration protocols. We never agreed to chains, Monroe replied. We agreed to cooperation. You turned that into control. The room erupted. Voices clashed in a dozen dialects. The air reeked of indignation. No one noticed the data feed at the chamber's edge flicker. No one but Monroe. Is this about sanctions? Growled Krothek of the Silac Varn, armored and towering. You don't like rules, so you run? Typical Deathworlder cowardice. Monroe smirked faintly. We don't run. We retreat strategically. You'll collapse without us, snapped the insectoid treasurer of Heroin. Galactic economics. You misunderstand, she said, raising her hand. You've been feeding off our systems, our infrastructure, our algorithms, our resilience. You think Earth was the parasite? Her tone sharpened. You've mistaken a provider for a pet. You can't survive without council authorization. Chancellor Virex barked. Monroe's jaw flexed once. We've survived extinction events, nuclear brinkmanship, world wars, pandemics, and your bureaucratic strangulation. We don't need permission to exist. Then she pressed a small crystal key against her palm. The chamber dimmed. In 72 hours, every Terran system will go dark to council access. Wormhole relays, comms, trade ports gone. Any intrusion attempt will be considered hostile. Are you threatening war? Zor rasped. Monroe stared. We're not threatening anything. We're just leaving. The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon. She turned to walk. Then paused. Looked over her shoulder. You had centuries to treat us like equals. Instead, you dissected our DNA, censored our culture, abducted our children under hybrid viability research. Krothek stepped forward. Those were approved initiatives. By whom? Monroe snapped. By the ones who labeled us unpredictable? Dangerous? We asked for answers. You offered silence. We were protecting the balance, Virex said softly. Monroe faced him fully now. We are the balance. She left the chamber without waiting for acknowledgement. The council remained in stunned quiet. Somewhere, deep in the chamber walls, a pulse flickered red and vanished. 12 hours later, the first reports came in. Minor ones, at first. An AI logistics node on the rim froze mid-sequence. Terraforming drones over Karn 7 reverted to default Earth parameters and began rewilding with extinct Terran flora. Trade data vanished off Council Cloud. Navigation systems blinked offline. At hour 14, the Helion Prime Central Vault collapsed. Files spanning 5 centuries, history, law, science, wiped. At hour 18, warships that used Earth's gravitic compensators lost artificial gravity. 23 vessels crushed themselves from the inside out. By hour 22, panic spread. A council emergency session convened. This is sabotage, Chancellor Virex thundered. It's worse, said Counselor Kezrin, one of the few who had ever lived on Earth. It's abandonment. No species could have done this in under a day, Zor wailed. Krothek's voice was cold. They didn't do this in a day. They did it over centuries. Slowly. Quietly. Everything we built with them was laced with their architecture. They wouldn't dare, Virex said, though his voice faltered. They didn't dare. They decided. The session broke into argument. While they bickered, more sectors fell. Resource hubs reprogrammed themselves. Medical AI began citing outdated Earth ethics logs and denying care. One by one, the stars went dark. Then, at hour 32, a transmission arrived. No source. No timestamp. No traceable signal. Just a voice. Admiral Monroe. You thought war was explosions. Ships. Screams. No. War is knowing exactly how much your enemy depends on you, and then stepping away. The feed ended with a single Terran glyph, a circle, broken. Back on Earth, beneath the shroud of its planetary cloaking field, Admiral Monroe stood on a mountainside, watching auroras flicker across the sky. An officer stepped up beside her. The Council's collapsing. They've lost control of 4 sectors already. Civil unrest is turning to revolt. Monroe didn't smile. They never wanted us at the table. Now they'll learn what happens when the cook leaves the kitchen and takes the fire with them. The officer hesitated. Ma'am, what if they retaliate? Monroe finally turned, eyes cold. Let them. Silence stretched. We never fired a shot. All we did was walk away. Ma'am. That message, the one we sent. What if they hear it as a declaration? It wasn't one. Then what was it? Monroe's voice dropped to a whisper. It was a warning. They just didn't understand the language. Behind them, Earth hummed with unseen power. Invisible to alien eyes. Unreachable by foreign hands. But everywhere, its ghost remained. In the void left behind, the galaxy began to unravel. And Earth? Earth watched. Quietly. Prepared. And waiting. 36 hours after Earth's departure, the cracks became impossible to ignore. The Dari shipping lanes vanished from the galactic grid. Freight AI that ran on Terran predictive logic began routing into dead sectors. Entire cargo chains were swallowed by blind jumps. Emergency calls rang out, but no relay stations responded. The stars weren't just dark, they were indifferent. High Chancellor Virex convened another emergency council. This time, the room was half empty. Earth has crippled our infrastructure, he said, clawed fingers twitching. But it's not warfare. It's blackmail. They're holding the Galacxy hostage. Councillor Kezrin stood slowly, his silver-blue skin pale. They're not holding us. They've already let go. This isn't a siege. It's a demonstration. Of what? Growled Krothek, arms crossed like drawn weapons. That humans are gods? No, Kezrin replied. That they were necessary. The chamber descended into chaos. Shouted languages overlapped. Dozens of embassies had gone offline. Drones programmed in Terran subroutines were failing to recognize master authority. Entire colonies built on Terran gravity regulators had issued distress signals. Civilians were floating helplessly, infrastructure in ruins. Krothek slammed his armored hand onto the table, silencing the room. This is weakness. They slinked off, like shadows, and now we crumble? I will not bow to ghosts. You'll bow to necessity, Kezrin muttered. Krothek turned. Say that again. You heard me. Earth didn't poison our systems. They were our systems. You let them wire the Council's arteries with their tech, because it was faster, smarter, stronger. And now, they've cut the cord. Then we reconnect it. Krothek snarled. Find the humans. Demand compliance. They're gone. Virex interjected. Not yet. We still have assets. Listening posts on the edge of Sol, remote probes, archived code. Krothek leaned forward. Then we initiate Operation Retribution. Silence. Kezrin's jaw tightened. That wasn't approved. I don't need approval. It's not a rescue. It's a provocation. They provoked us, Krothek said, rising. You think this is a game of silence? No. This is a declaration. And it will be answered. He stormed out before the council could vote. Within 4 hours, 118 council dreadnoughts were assembled at the border of Terran space. No response came from Earth. No pings. No probes. No warnings. Sol was quiet, far too quiet. Krothek stood on the bridge of the warship Gorak unyielding, jaw clenched. Initiate jump. Bring me the ghost planet. When the fleet arrived, what they saw wasn't a system. It was a tomb. Mars was gutted. Its atmosphere generators inactive. The orbital rings gone. The moon? Empty. Scans returned data loops traps. False positives. Solar interference burned sensors. And Earth itself, cloaked. Run deep scan. Krothek barked. The technician paled. Sir? Earth isn't just cloaked. It's invisible to subspace. As if it was never there. Then blind fire. All quadrants. We'll force them out. Dreadnoughts opened fire. Plasma shells detonated across orbital bands. No response. Moments later, the feed died. One by one, ships reported internal malfunctions. Reactor stability dropped. AI command cores went mute. Krothek screamed for status, until his own comms cut out. A single frequency pierced the blackout. A voice. Calm. Female. Stop hitting yourself. The bridge went still. Funny how you called us animals. And yet you built your house with our bones. Krothek shouted. Who speaks? Identify. You should know, she said. We spent 400 years fixing your messes. Admiral Monroe. This isn't an ambush, she said. This is the consequence of arrogance. You played Empire while we played Engineer. Show yourself! No. One dreadnought imploded from within, its internal oxygen pressurization reversed. Another began rotating out of sync with its gravity generator, folding inward like paper under fire. You thought Earth was a pawn in your chessboard. But we built the board. We installed the lighting. We invented the game timer. You never played against us. You played because of us. You'll pay for this. Krothek growled. No. We already paid. Centuries of condescension, biological violation, and broken promises. Now we're closed. Your card has been declined. Dozens of ships began falling out of orbit, slow, silent kills. No weapons. Just failure. Surgical, perfect. Krothek screamed into the silence. You think this is over? We will rebuild. We will retaliate. I hope so, Monroe replied. Because then you'll finally learn. We were never the threat. We were the restraint. Then the feed died. On Helion Prime, council screens went dark. The feed never returned. Kezran sat alone, watching the last trace of the Sol fleet vanish from telemetry. They didn't fight back, he whispered. They just stopped helping. Around him, the air felt thinner. The silence, heavier. The collapse had begun. And Earth hadn't fired a single shot. The jump into Sol's system was sharp, aggressive, and loud. 118 dreadnoughts, 15 carrier-class cruisers, and a full battalion of shock planetfall dropships tore into Terran space like war gods. Krothek stood on the forward deck of Gorak unyielding, his massive claws folded behind his back, gaze fixed on the emptiness ahead. Status? He barked. No resistance, warlord. The system is dead. Mars stripped of its defense satellites. The orbital rigs over Titan vaporized. Even the asteroid mining routes had gone cold. No signal. No heat trails. No movement. This is bait, said Subcommander Harzak. They're luring us in. They wouldn't dare, Krothek replied. Not to my face. He sent out a wideband hail. Terran leadership, respond. You have 30 seconds to surrender your cloaking matrix and present your leadership. Any delay will be interpreted as open hostility. The timer ticked down. Silence. Begin scanning for heat signatures. Full spectrum. The scanners flickered. Data returned, then scrambled. Feedback loops, false echoes, impossible gravity readings. One technician whispered, "The system, it's phasing." "Speak clearly," Krothek growled. "It's like it's shifting, just out of sync with our readings." "Then resync. Lock the system down." Before the technician could answer, a blip appeared. Not a Terran fleet. A single vessel. Small. Ancient. The hull bore the markings of Earth's Third Fleet, decommissioned centuries ago. It broadcast a single word. "Run." The feed cut. The dreadnought's bridge fell still. Then, without warning, Gorik Unyielding's artificial gravity collapsed. Crew members slammed into ceilings, floated sideways, or collapsed to their knees. "All systems!" shouted the engineer, but the rest of the message glitched into static. Consoles went dark, flickered, and rebooted in a language no one recognized. Human letters, scrawled in old Terran military font, scrolled rapidly. Sci-Fi protocol, activated. Sterilization sequence commencing. Unauthorized presence detected. Goodbye. "I want shields now!" Krothek roared. "No response from systems. Manual override locked!" Harzak screamed. In unison, across all 118 dreadnoughts, gravity systems inverted. Bulkheads tore open. Internal drones activated and began cutting through crew compartments, not by order, but by old, buried code left dormant in the hulls of Council-built ships. Every Terran part. Every chip. Every coil of wire. All had waited asleep. Now they were awake. One ship imploded as its hypercore was forced into overdrive, collapsing into a singularity that swallowed its escorts. Another began playing human operatic music at full blast, Beethoven's Ode to Joy, distorted and slow, as its crew suffocated in sealed decks. Krothek stumbled toward the central console, slamming his fists into the command deck. "Find me their source! Now!" Harzak pointed at the display. "It's not from outside. It's inside us. They're inside our tech. We purged their code years ago. They built the purge system, too." Then, a voice returned to the comms. Cold. Familiar. "You brought this on yourselves." Admiral Iris Monroe. Krothek snarled, blood oozing from a gash on his jaw. "Show yourself, coward. You already saw us. Every time you used your NAV charts. Every time your weapons locked on target. Every time your AI saved a colony from collapse. We were there. We are warriors," Krothek spat. "We don't kill with keyboards." "Exactly," Monroe replied. "That's why you never understood the war you were losing. Face me. You were never our enemy. Just our consequence." Dozens of Krothek's ships began colliding. Targeting systems turned rogue, engines ignited at full thrust into allies. Fire bloomed in the void like angry suns. "You insulted our culture. Experimented on our children. Mocked our ethics. You made your species dependent on us and called us primitives. You mistook patience for passivity. That was your final mistake." Krothek reached for the manual override of the helm, slamming a code into the system that should have forced a restart. The screen blinked. "Error, command not accepted. Humans never gave you that option." Screams echoed across the bridge. An explosion rocked the ship's aft section. One of the comms officers was sucked through the collapsing hull. Krothek turned to Harzak. "Get to the dropships. Get to a planet anything. They're gone," Harzak whispered. "All of them." Monroe's voice returned calm. "We didn't destroy you. We just stopped holding your hand." "What do you want?" Krothek growled. "Nothing," Monroe replied. "We're already gone." Then the signal ended. The rest of the fleet tried to jump, but their wormhole drives had already been scrubbed. Every command returned gibberish. On Hellion Prime, the Council watched the destruction in real time. They watched ships vanish from screens. They watched biosigns drop to zero. They watched Terran protocol after Terran protocol engage, none of which had been documented, all of which now rendered the fleet null. Chancellor Virex buried his face in trembling hands. They said they weren't threatening us. Kezran stared at the feed. They didn't threaten. They simply removed themselves. Zor gasped. We sent an army. And they didn't even fire a shot. No, Kezran whispered. That was the shot. The screen showed the Sol system again. Silent. Still. Unbothered. Untouched. And behind the static, just before the feed dissolved, a single human message remained etched in the data stream. When you remove the foundation, the tower falls. Then it was gone. The council convened in emergency darkness. Power was being rationed. The once gleaming chamber now pulsed with dim emergency biolights, and static danced across every display screen. No one sat in their traditional seats. Rank had lost meaning. Order had lost authority. The great empire of interstellar diplomacy had collapsed into silence. Chancellor Virex's feathers were dulled and falling. The Sol fleet is gone. 118 dreadnoughts. An entire armada. Lost. Without retaliation. Without return. Counselor Zor hissed. That was not warfare. That was extermination. No, Kezran of the Itari said quietly. That was rejection. He stood alone at the edge of the circle, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. We built a civilization on human scaffolding. We relied on them because it was easy. Their minds ran faster, their machines were more resilient, their strategies too insane to predict. So we wrapped them in chains and called it alliance. They betrayed the pact. Virex snapped. We betrayed their trust, Kezran replied. You took their children. You altered their DNA without consent. You mined their culture and dismissed their voice. And then you acted surprised when they left the table they had built. Krothek's chair was empty. So were the seats of dozens of others. Some had perished in soul. Some had turned off their comms and gone dark. Others had begun wars of their own. The galaxy was fracturing. Entire planets were declaring independence, vowing to return to isolationism or worshipping Earth's absence like divine punishment. The cult of the Severance had emerged from the fringe, spreading like a fire across border worlds. They didn't want war. They wanted Earth to come back. Some began human rituals, quoting Terran literature as scripture. They don't see Earth as an enemy, Virex muttered. They see them as gods. They're not gods, Kezran said. They're just free. Zor snarled. We need contact. A line of communication. A window. We need control, Virex hissed. Even if it requires force. There must be something left. Some protocol, some frequency. There's one, Kezran interrupted. There's always one. Virex stared. You kept a human channel? Kezran nodded. I was ambassador to Earth for 12 years. They gave me a final link. A failsafe. I didn't know what it was until now. He stepped to the ancient console, pulled a weathered chip from his coat, and inserted it. The room went silent. The chamber lights dimmed further, flickering with the sudden reactivation of forbidden code. Terran code. The screen lit up. A single set of coordinates. Deep space. Uncharted. Beyond the galactic map. Not even blacklisted. Just omitted. Zor flinched. They want us to follow. They want us to ask, Kezran corrected. You'd walk into their web willingly? No, Kezran said. But I'll walk into their silence. Hours later, a small diplomatic cruiser departed from Helion Prime. No fleet escort. No weapons online. Just Kezran, 4 aides, and an atmosphere of desperation wrapped in honor. The journey took 4 days. On the 4th, the ship exited into dead space. No stars. No systems. Just void. But floating ahead, nestled inside what looked like folded black glass, was a station. No signal. No defense systems online. No response to hails. Kezrin opened a private channel and said only one word. Please! Then it opened. Inside the station, they found no crew. No lights. Only a single projection, flickering to life. Admiral Monroe stood in holographic stillness. Her eyes were the same, calm, cold, precise. Ambassador Kezrin, she said. I expected it would be you. You knew someone would come, he said softly. We prepared for every outcome, she replied. Including your extinction. Kezrin bowed slightly. We come with no threat. No weapons. No trickery. Only a plea. Monroe's image tilted her head. Why? We've lost everything. You never had it. Kezrin flinched but nodded. Then we seek understanding. Monroe said nothing for a moment. Then, why should we speak? You let it happen. You were there when they dissected our minds under the guise of peacekeeping. You were there when they erased our voice in the council. You watched them abduct our prodigies, strip our legacy, weaponize our compassion. You sat in silence. I regret my silence, Kezrin said. It wasn't cowardice. It was hope. You mistook our restraint for obedience, she said. Then teach us now, he replied. Tell us what it means to build, not conquer. Monroe's eyes narrowed. It means sacrifice. It means not flinching when others spit in your face and call it diplomacy. It means standing alone if that's what justice demands. We're ready to learn. No, she said. You're ready to beg. Kezrin bowed again. Then let us beg. A long silence passed. Then Monroe said, You won't find Earth. Not now. Not for centuries. We've folded ourselves behind reality. We left, truly left. Then what is this? He asked. A warning. A window. One of many. Each sent to species who dared to ask instead of demand. Then there's still hope. There's still consequence, she corrected. You want to restore what you had. But what you had was built on a lie. If you want something better, you'll build it yourselves. Without us. Without our hand on your shoulder. Or our sword at your back. Kezrin's shoulders dropped. And if we succeed? Then maybe, she said, we'll return. Her image blinked out. A new signal appeared. Data, massive, encrypted, elegant in its construction. Kezrin opened it. Blueprints. Protocols. A starter kit for something better. Not technology. Not weapons. Governance, ethics, decentralized autonomy, and methods of interspecies integration built on mutual sovereignty, not dominance. Behind the schematics, a message. You've been offered the match. Light your own fire. Kezrin left the station, hands shaking. And across the stars, worlds torn by war and blackouts slowly came online, those that received the gift. Not power. Not dominance. But the tools to stand alone. Earth didn't destroy the galaxy. They just let it see itself, without them. They called it the Silence War. But no war was ever declared. No fleets marched. No worlds burned in public spectacle. The collapse had already happened. Earth hadn't needed to fire weapons. They had simply disappeared and left the universe to realize how much of itself had been quietly Terran. The Council no longer existed. What remained was a scattered assembly of frightened systems, disconnected colonies, and power-hungry remnants. The outer sectors fought over surviving Terran code fragments like ancient relics. Some saw Earth as a myth. Others a curse. But all knew one thing: nothing worked the same since humanity left. On the edge of what had once been mapped space, Ambassador Kezrin returned from the void. His ship limped back into Itari space, broadcasting one signal: the data Earth had given him. It wasn't an olive branch. It was a challenge. The files were opened. Some rejected them immediately. Others studied them like holy scripture. On backwater worlds and collapsing colonies, leaders who had once parroted council law now sat in dim rooms, learning Terran principles of local governance, decentralized command, resilient infrastructure. Earth hadn't given them technology. They'd given them something far more dangerous. Ideas. And where ideas spread, change followed. 2 cycles later, Kezrin stood on a neutral moon, overseeing the first summit of the Free Stars. 20 species attended. 20 more sent observers. A small ripple in the void, but the largest gathering since Earth's departure. There were no grand speeches. No throne-like seats. Everyone sat at the same table. No translators needed. The Terran framework had provided neurosync protocol packages, comms stripped of bias, interpretation handled by machine logic born of wartime necessity and peacetime idealism. When asked if Earth would attend, Kezrin gave the same answer each time. They already have. Far beyond that summit, past the dying rings of the collapsed Authari Republic, deep in the blackest stretch of unregistered space, something stirred. In the dark, a Terran AI, codename ONYX, activated after 200 years of hibernation. Its systems pulsed to life, not from a threat, but from a trigger, an alignment of actions across systems Earth had marked as potential candidates. Not obedience. Understanding. Onyx scanned a dozen interstellar feeds, quietly verifying a checklist. Local autonomy? Achieved. Non-genocidal species governance? Confirmed. No slave labor. No forced DNA manipulation. Military de-escalation in disputed sectors. Terran ethics protocols engaged without external input. It sent a signal. The signal echoed through old Terran satellites scattered like forgotten seeds. They woke. They watched. Then they spoke, not to governments but to people. Every screen. Every channel. Every beacon suddenly bore a message, 3 words in Terran glyphs. You listened. Now learn. In the new capital of the Free Stars Alliance, Kezrin's comm panel lit up. An incoming transmission. From Earth. He opened it. Admiral Monroe stood where she always had, in perfect stillness, eyes hard, voice steel wrapped in ice. Ambassador. He bowed slightly. Admiral. You've done well. I did only what should have been done long ago. You unlearned arrogance. That was the real task. We're ready. You're not, she said. But you're closer. The screen split. Dozens of faces appeared, Terran officers, engineers, diplomats. All standing silently. This is not our return, Monroe said. This is our review. Kezrin straightened. What does that mean? It means you get one answer. One question. And one delivery. Kezrin thought for only a moment. What was your plan, truly, when you left? Monroe didn't hesitate. To force the Galacxy to feel the absence of the one species it thought it didn't need. Kezrin nodded slowly. And the delivery? Monroe raised her hand. A new transmission injected itself into the Free Stars archive. It wasn't military, economic, or political. It was educational, millions of hours of Terran knowledge. Science. Art. Philosophy. Not orders. Not demands. Just the full weight of human experience. Then she said the last words the Galacxy would hear from Earth for another generation. We never left to win. We left to see who you were without us. Some failed. Some rose. You chose to rise. That's why you've earned this. Her image faded. The transmission ended. No location trace. No follow-up. Kezrin stood in silence. He turned to his fellow delegates and said simply, We were not punished. We were tested. And we may still be. The summit continued, but the tone had shifted. Confidence, yes, but tempered now by reflection. The universe had survived Earth's absence. Barely. And now, Earth had given it a sliver of its future. Not domination. Direction. Across the stars, chaos began to coalesce into order, not forced, not bought, but chosen. The Galacxy had been humbled. Not by war. Not by blood. By a single act. Earth had left. And the universe had never recovered from their silence. Now it was learning to speak again. In Terran.